Hello friends, I am Professor Zahoor, esteemed Faculty of Fine Arts, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today's module is how to see the different form of nature. Today's module is learning to see. So before we start a landscape, I want to show you a certain things how to combine different forms, shapes, values and tonal variations. Let's begin with black color here. I will just make a few boxes. When we talk of landscape, usually horizontal view comes to mind. But most of the old masters have made many vertical landscapes. The wide area usually fits well in horizontal composition. Now we have four rectangles at our disposition. The motive is how to fill these with different shapes, lines and forms. Next step is to combine various factors and try to compose with minimized elements. In the first horizontal space, put a few zigzag strokes towards the center of the page and then draw a baseline. Darken the right corners by a few bold lines and fill up the space. One can see three things on the drawing sheet: negative area, positive area and linear element. The division of black and white is almost 50-50. So add a few more dark strokes to increase the black area and reduce the white part. The vision first goes to the white portion despite it being small. It is acting as a positive area and turns black into a negative one. Moving to the next block, again draw dark lines on the left and right edges, but placing them in the center of the horizontal layout. Then using the lines, fill the sky also with the black strokes, turning more and more areas as negative. In the first composition, the active positive area was the sky, but now looking at the second, one can make out that the positive area has shifted from the sky to the foreground, depicting the pathway. The negative area is always 50-60% and the positive is always less to attract the attraction of the viewer and pull the vision in. Jeff Koons rightly says, if I try to articulate every detail in drawing, it would be like missing the forest for the trees. So it's just about getting the outline of the forest. Taking the turn of the third rectangular space. Draw another space division, keeping in mind three factors of negative, positive and linear again. Draw a fan-like pattern covering half of the upper space. then a bold patch on left and perpendicular line, giving the illusion of the thatched roof of the hut. Every stroke keeps in changing the look of drawing. With a dark all around, the vision is getting pulled towards the center white part. A dark frame makes the eye travels more and more towards the center. Taking into consideration all the three layouts, one can observe how an artist can change the perception of a viewer too and make his vision travel from upper part in the first to lower one in the second and the middle part in the third panel. One needs to work and practice a lot to find the forms in an abstraction and to create a composition through a few strokes. Following Van Gogh philosophy, as practice makes perfect, I cannot but make progress. Each drawing one makes, each study one paints is a step forward. Prepare a few more sketches from a clear concept. Starting with the fourth panel, more your brush as per instinct. Play with it and see what crops up. Fill up the space with free brush strokes. Draw a horizon and below that line put a dark patch and try to fill left side with variation of linear strokes. Different thickness and sizes of strokes create interest. Draw a dark frame. One can see how the vision has transferred now to the right lower side in the fourth composition. By the shift of the white area on the right. It's just a play of three components: white positive, black negative, and the linear. Vasily Kandinsky rightly says that there is no must in art because art is free. The more we practice, the more one will come to know the skill of how to see, to observe, to explore abstractions, and be free of any limitation of imagination. An artist's imagination has to be a free bird. While experimenting with more sketches to build the ability to see, one can see what a difference a bold stroke can make. In the previous sketches, the black was negative, but in this drawing, the white is negative and black is the active part. The solid black can be a shape or a simple abstract pattern, playing a positive role by pulling the vision in and pushing white in background. Exploration of the possibilities of brush can bring out miracles of an artist. Each bold, weak or dry strokes can bring out a meaning as well as texture to the drawing. New forms, new shapes, new vision and perspective comes up. Just by a few strokes, one can turn negative into positive and vice versa. The artistic concern with accuracy need not result in photographic realism. Often illusions of reality can be created by simplification, eliminating details the eye might see. Or there can be a piling up of detail more than would be visible at one time. This can happen when the artist becomes obsessed with a subject and has trouble learning it. Some artists embellish and enrich a surface for years, selecting more and more, eliminating less and less. The image becomes a kind of visual storehouse. Simplifying while maintaining the essence of real place is also a very important factor in the lesson of learning to see. A gray tone or linear element can also play a role of positive space in a drawing. One simply has to observe the simplified shadows as per the time of the day, whether it's morning, evening, or night. Morning is soft, so one can use more of linear areas and less of dark. Afternoon can have sharp contrast, and night can again make black as negative and grey as positive. In the morning scene, one can add grey strokes and white, and less of dark areas as it will lend a cool and soft effect in depicting the right eye. Even without any use of colors, one can make out the cool effect by just the usage of black, white, and grey. The same drawing can be turned into afternoon drawing, where one can see the dark shadows due to sharp sunlight. with the application of harsh patches over the ground and the trees. One can see the white in contrast to the dark shadows. Further, the same drawing can be turned more dark to give the evening effect by adding bold strokes of black. Black will become the negative area, unlike the morning time where white and grays will prevailing more. The drawing will be filled with black and gray variation, making the shadows dark and giving heavy look to the foliages. J.P. Huggeston says, for me, a painting is like a story which stimulates the imagination and draws the mind into a place filled with expectation, excitement, wonder, and pleasure. One needs to be bold enough to explore the abstractions and exploit the imagination to very extent possible by minimum or maximum usage of strokes or colors. The black in the drawing has added weight to the lower section and given the shape of a boulder. The greys in the sky are playful clouds which are forming a language grey of the foreground. The basic concept should be to combine unrelated elements in a uniformity of patterns. Harmonious flow or an abstract playfulness. Hand is the best example where one can see fingers in some shape but different sizes and thickness, and supporting them is the bold and heavy thumb. When one brings the four fingers together, it is less powerful in comparison to the time when thumb engulfs them implies power. That's the meaning of composition, where there are numerous shapes and varied lines which are combined by an additional force of focal point. In the previous drawing, The focal point was the small white part of the sky peeping from the foliage and grays of clouds. In the present drawing, the positive area is the bold patch behind the boulder. Different shapes and lines are there, but the stress goes to the darkest part. Every stroke has its own flow and direction, but lead to the bold black, the strong force of the drawing, without which the drawing would have looked blank and flat. There is no limit to exploration. Experiment with as many frames as possible. Just play with the colors. Play with forms and space. Let the white of the paper base shows its own volume. Create an atmosphere with grey and black and white playing hide and seek at different places. Train your eye with the two shades, black and white, which are an essence of everything. These contrasting tones can create nine values. Let the brush strokes form their own pattern. Each dry strokes and the impact of bristle of the brush can tell its own tale. It's upon an artist which area he wants to highlight and which things to have subdued effect. One can see in the new frame how intriguing the lines of the far brush are. What an interesting pattern they are forming without giving any shape of an object. Put a dark bold patch next to the lines and see the contrast. Again explore new textures with different types of brushes. A new form, a new texture will crop up without any defined shape. One needs to master these brushes and have full control over the strokes and effects created by them. The accidental compositions also hold a balance and harmony. Line or light can appear in an artwork through the edges of color areas or a sharp contrast between light and dark. The brilliance of color acts as force and attracts attention when combined with sharpness of focus. One can create illusions of deep space on a flat base. One can learn to see by imitating great masters' works and observe their experiments and intricacies. One needs to learn and study how, without bringing out the details, how one can represent reality. Division of space visually is also a part of learning to see. One should never divide the space equally. A symmetrical division is always more attractive. In symmetrical division, center is the meeting point which does not let the eye move away. But in symmetrical pattern, the eye travels from the meeting point to the whole area around. The contrast of simple straight line is a curved line, a strong contrast between the two, same as triangle and circle. Two contrast shapes and two contrast lines. Similarly, two contrasting colors are red and green, as they are the complementary colors. A painting with the tones of red, orange, and yellow will look monotonous until a contrast shade is added to it. Whether it's contrasting color, line, or shape, it always it will always attract viewers' eye. Every artist has his own way to explore, and that only brings out the uniqueness in composition and makes the artist stand out with his individual style and signature. Realizations come with experience, and experience comes through practice. After the basic observation of black and white, one needs to learn through colors and their representations too. For a morning scene, one needs to keep the colors cool, soft, and of pastel tones. freshness and purity of a color adds freshness to the painting too. Dirtier the effect, the stale the painting will look. Green creates a cool effect with mauves. A little purple at the base of green gives it a heavier look by creating a depth. Keeping the pure colors together itself grants luminosity to the painting. The painting reflects the light and the pious touch of unblended colors. Another frame, another story. Now an experiment with the warm colors, the tones of red, yellow and orange, in contrast to the coolness of green. An abstraction also speaks its own language and leaves it on the viewer what he wants to imagine and see through the chaotic strokes. The imagination of the viewer can sometimes be exactly like the artist. While sometimes the viewer is in his own imaginative world and finds something totally alienated from the representation. The use of dark color adds shadows to the painting and also represent heaviness. The grey and shaded tones will depict an evening scene full of shadows and less light. The opaqueness of the colors add more impassible silhouettes. Unlike the transparent colors which reflect light, the dark outline to a painting works as a frame towards its completion and pulls the vision inwards. After representing morning and evening, let's experiment on afternoon scene too, with greens, purple and yellows. It's a time of the day with sharp contrast and light at its peak of brightness, strong shadows. Use of warm tone at some places will reflect the heat of the sun. One can see and learn only by experimenting about the colors and their emphasis in representing a particular time period. One can see the variation in tones in a morning scene, which are cool and soft. Afternoon scene full of contrast and sharpness, and evening reflecting heaviness of shadows. Three moods not only reflect the time of day, but also the play of colors and the role they play in apt depiction of a scene or an object. It is in a way knowledge of color palette for an artist. A painting can never be complete for an artist. He can always add more and more elements as per the need of the composition and his imagination. Mark Davis rightly says that an artist is an actor who is not limited by the body, only by his ability and perhaps experience. An artist can add his own visual statements and give shape to his thoughts through his painting. One can play with the same colors. The only thing that matters is the depth created by their placement, somewhere light and somewhere dark. Creating details in foreground and dullness or vagueness in the background.